Hey traders, welcome back to the FXE YouTube channel. Starting to see some really interesting price action. So yesterday Powell comes out and says something along the lines of he's not confident that interest rates are high enough to fight inflation. And thanks to these new fundamentals, we start to see a change of behavior. So now we have a little more clarity on the charts and what to expect. So for today's video, I'll go over yesterday's price action and then give some trade ideas for today. But first, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's get into it. So quickly on the fundamentals, I already mentioned about Powell's speech. The US is off today, so probably not so much movement during New York session. The focus will be on GBP today, mainly because there is GDP news as well as trade balance news. So if any of that's bad, it'll probably accelerate the push to the downside. And if we look at the yields, so you can see yields came up quite aggressively, especially after Powell's speech. I think it was probably like somewhere around here, and then the last couple hours of New York session just spiked up after Powell spoke. So we're retesting the fair value gaps now. So here, missed it a little here, and starting to pull back a little now. Not really sure what it wants to do now, but I'm guessing eventually down, but it may take a few days. With the recent fundamental news that we have, I wouldn't be surprised if it starts to come up a little higher, and then maybe sometime next week turns around and starts to come back down. And then again, really quickly on the majors, so you can see that most of them have broken down already. You can see GBP, RGU broke structure over here, New Zealand broke structure over here, NU broke structure over here, AU broke structure over here. It's only EU that hasn't broken structure yet, but it's very likely to follow. Okay. Moving on to DXY. So on DXY, what you can see is we started the day with a lot of consolidation, and then when London session came around, we had a drive to the upside. It cleared all this inefficiency, and then came into this hourly fair value gap up here. And then after that, you can see it had a reaction, pull back, and then drive to the downside. This drive to the downside cleared all the internal lows. So we had equal lows here, swept all this liquidity, reaction, and then reversal. And then this was around the time that Powell spoke. We had an aggressive move to the upside, then a massive pullback, and then continuation to the upside. And then after that, we've just been consolidating in this area ever since. So looking at how the lows were swept and then the aggressive push to the upside, breaking the range, I'm guessing it's going to continue higher now. It's not to say that we can't have a pullback first, because I believe we will. But I won't be focusing so much on when and how things are going to happen. I'm just going to focus more on the key areas of interest. So if price gets into those areas, you know to watch and see if we have a reaction and potential reversal in those areas. So we have this 1 hour fair value gap that was created on the push up. So price could come all the way down here and then reverse and continue to the upside. We have a 1 hour fair value gap just above as well. So potentially we may come into there and then come down and then go back up. And my guess now is that we'll likely have a bigger pullback and continue up to the daily fair value gap and volume imbalance. So after the Powell news, it's put a sentiment in the market, and that sentiment will probably stay there for a few days. And because of that, I'm guessing we see strength in the dollar. The dollar continues up, comes back into these levels where we have these inefficiencies and the OT areas. And if we get a reversal after that to drive it down, then great. We look for longs on EU then. But who knows? I mean, it may even just continue to the upside at this point. And if we go to the 15-minute time frame, the main thing I want to add on this time frame is, okay, so first you can see the resting liquidity just above or below the current range that we're trading in, and then below that we have a 15-minute fair value gap. It's quite a wide one that was created, and aligning with this fair value gap, we also have a 15-minute breaker block. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the area that we come into to retest before we start continuing to the upside. But at the same time, yes, we do have a 1 hour fair value gap below that. It could go down there as well. But my guess is probably one of these two areas and then continuation to the upside. Now if we move to EU, starting with the hourly time frame, so you can see same thing, we had a lot of consolidation to start the day, then price broke the range, came down all the way into this 1 hour fair value gap here, thereafter having a reaction, one last pullback before driving to the upside, and the price came all the way to this inefficiency. It swept the previous range, created a higher high, came into this imbalance where we had the 1 hour fair value gap, then had a reaction and then reversed to the downside. So Powell started speaking, aggressive push to the downside, massive pullback, and then continuation to the downside. We haven't broken the lows. Instead, we've created equal lows. So clear area of sell side liquidity to be targeted. And as of now, I've shifted bearish on my bias after Powell's speech. I'm guessing that will carry over for a few days and we see strength in the dollar. And as we've had that really choppy price action, I'm thinking at one point or another we will get a pullback. And if we do, this 1 hour fair value gap stands out. Downside targets, obviously we have the sell side liquidity just below, but then below that we have an hourly fair value gap, and then we have the daily fair value gap below that. And if we're able to reach this daily fair value gap, that brings us into OTE. But wouldn't surprise me if we took out the equal lows, then had a pullback, and then continuation, something like this. Take out the lows, then come back for that fair value gap, and then continue further to the downside. And then if we look on the 15-minute time frame, so one thing to add on this time frame is, again, you start to see the creation of equal highs. Right above that, we have a 15-minute fair value gap, which aligns with the 15-minute breaker block. So I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get to the hourly fair value gap, targets this instead, and then we see the continuation to the downside. But like I said, it may do something like come down first, then come up, and then continue to the downside. Anyways, for London, I'm quite neutral. Not really sure which direction it may go first, because there's clear liquidity on both sides that it could target, and reasons to target the liquidity on both sides. So honestly, I think it can go either way, and then the other way right after, and potentially the other way again later on in the day. And as New York is off, not sure if we'll get much movement during the New York session. So I'll be focusing primarily on London today and may skip New York entirely. It's not to say I won't hold trades, because if we do get into one of these areas of inefficiencies and we do get a reversal and I'm in a short, I'll probably take profits at a reasonable level, whether it's a lows or if it's a fair value gap, and then just leave the rest running. But as it sells, definitely they'll be closed by the end of the day. I don't want to keep sells open over the weekend. Anyways, that's it for today's quick update. Hopefully you found some value in today's video, and if you did, a like and a subscribe would be appreciated. Good luck trading today, and I'll see you for the next one. Peace.
Black Swan.